I got to know John in the early 1970s. I was a trainee sub-editor of the TLS. He was the already distinguished literary editor of the New Statesman. I was in my early 20s and he was in his late 30s. And he was taking me up and bringing me on. I found him tremendously attractive right from the start, and also in a kind of vampiric, novelistic way, in that I'd never quite come across the combination of brain power and self-effacement combined. I mean, it's in the nature of high intelligence to assert itself, to dominate, but he wasn't like that at all. And in fact, he was not happy at the New Statesman. He didn't like the sort of the atmosphere of activism, left-wing activism, represented by James Benton and Christopher Hitchens. I don't think they ever tried to make him join the Social Revolutionary Party. But he was always rather bruised and dismayed by the politicized atmosphere of the TLS. And he would take me, every time I came to deliver a piece, he would take me off to an obscure pub where no statesman people ever went. We would drink and talk for hours. It was always thought that I would go to the New Statesman, but in fact he came to the TLS where I was. He was a brilliant editor, again with this combination of omniscience and self-effacement. For instance, he once said to me, he would bring up, and he'd usually have about 3 or 4 points for a 1,200 word piece. And he said once, you begin 2 paragraphs, consecutive paragraphs with the same word. And I thought, can you not do that? And in fact, I'd never seen it said that you can't do that. But I've always noticed that careful writers don't do it. Careless writers do. And I have never done it again. When he was at TLS one time, he said, I'd just written a commentary piece about the picture of Dorian Gray, where I'd ended idiotically by saying that this novel was a more scatological work than is commonly thought, something like that. And he said, you can't mean scatological. And I said, why? What does that mean? He said, well, to do with excrement. And I said, do I mean eschatological? He said, I don't think you do. That has to do with death and judgment and the last things. So I said, what do I mean? He said, Mr. P? And I said, yes, that's exactly it. I was at the TLS when this was the absolute climacteric of rather humdrum TLS life, like being present at the French and the American revolutions. It was when anonymity ceased. And I remember John, another great characteristic of his, avoidance of conflict. Even quite a high level of evasiveness was brought to bear to avoid all possible conflict. And we had an hour-long meeting, 12 to 1, where then it was pretty much known in the office that John was going to announce the end of anonymity. And half an hour went by, and he was still talking about special issues. Then the next 15 minutes he was saying that certain laxities of the office boy. Then for coming up to 1 o'clock, he was talking about the tea lady making rather a lot of noise when she came in. And he was sort of looking at his watch. And he said, I see I've left this for last. Anonymity's over. My favourite story about his diffidence is one I always think of as the two Johns. I was sitting at home in my flat in Queensway near where John lived, and the phone went, and someone said, "Hello, it's John here. Look, I'm in terrible trouble. I don't know what I'm doing." And off he went. And I thought, who the hell is this? And who is a John who rings up and thinks that just saying it's John here is going to do? It was John Coleman, who was much loved, self-dramatising, very talented, very drunken film critic for the New Statesman. And when I left TLS and went to the New Statesman, I inherited him, and John and I often used to exchange John Coleman stories. For instance, he was meant to be writing the lead arts review, and you'd go into his little cubbyhole at the office and find him with his head in his typewriter keys. And he'd lift his head up by the hair, and all he saw was Clint Eastwood. And then throw it back down again. Anyway, after an hour on the phone, I realised it was John Coleman, and it's sort of an extraordinary act, this is. Then I hung up, rang John Gross, and I said, "Let's go to this party together." He said, "All right, I'll be round in 15 minutes. Exactly 15 minutes later, my buzzer went. I picked up the answer phone. He said, "Martin, it's John Gross." And I always love that about him, his impeccable, gentle diffidence, and how unusual it was to find it in such a, I mean, to put it as briefly as I can, he was one of those concentrations of intelligence in the city, in London and then in New York. He was a pocket of discernment, and anyone who was edited by him, me very much included, from then on, always, everything you write, you send past John's desk. And I still do it, and I always will.